Hello and welcome to 60 Minutes or Less, a podcast from Birthday Cake for Breakfast. I'm Andy Hughes, and for episode 52, we end the year on a high, keeping the festive spirit going past Christmas with an interview with Ian Anderson, multi-instrumentalist, flautist, and chief vocalist in Jethro Tull. The second MBE recipient to appear on the podcast, as far as we know, Anderson has fronted Jethro Tull for nearly 60 years. It was quite the thrill then to feature an interview with Anderson off the back of Jethro Tull releasing their latest album, Curious Ruminant, in early 2025, some 50 plus years on from releasing their debut album, This Was, in 1968. A fascinating look into the inner workings of touring life and what kept Jethro Tull afloat for so long. We caught up over Zoom at the beginning of December 2025 to talk about Christmas, famous son-in-law Andrew Lincoln, avoiding pickpockets abroad, and the differences in touring between now and then. If you like the episode, let us know. Follow us on your favourite streaming platform and follow Birthday Cake for Breakfast on all the socials. Right, on to Ian Anderson. Enjoy.
I'm very sorry I'm running late this morning, but I had a few other things to do first, and I didn't time escape me, so my apologies for being late, but here we are. So if it's okay,
It's
fire away.
okay.
How can I help?
In a bit of a rush, I appreciate, but how do we find you this morning and where do we find you?
Well, you don't find me because I'm a very private person, and if you set out to find me, the chances are you won't. I used to have some callers at a previous address many years ago, which were on a couple of occasions very unwelcome intrusions. I mean, quite scary people. One escaped from a lunatic asylum, and the other one was just a bad person. So yeah, we are. You don't find me as a rule. I try and keep under the radar. So where you find me, I don't. Well, you find me in the BA Lounge at London Heathrow Terminal 5. And how do you find me? Well, then that's up to you to see if you can research it. But I don't exist at any of the addresses that you might find online. So, but if your question really was, how do I feel? How is my state of health, mental and physical? Then it's not in bad shape. You know, for a 78-year-old, I think I have most of my marbles under my control. One or two of them occasionally roll off the table, but can be recovered from the far side of the room under a wardrobe or chest of drawers or whatever it is. So yeah, I'm doing okay. I mean, the big test is going on stage and remembering a huge number of lyrics and notes to play. I have to recall that with perfect clarity, night after night. Even when we change the set list, I have to do a bit of rehearsal just to bring myself back up to speed, and hopefully that just takes two or three run-throughs, and then I think I'm okay. So generally speaking, I'm okay. Physically speaking, I go for my annual checks of a variety of sorts to look for something bad and ominous. Because I figure if you go looking for bad luck, then you won't find it. But when it sneaks up on you from behind, it can often be too late. So I go and I share things with certain other people who do the same thing. Mark Carmond and I had our colonoscopies only a week apart. I just thought I can divulge that little bit of internal interest in the field of endeavor and the field of rubber snakes. So yeah, we do those sort of things because we have to. It's a routine. It's not because we have colon cancer. It's because we don't want to get it. And if we do
For
get it,
sure.
we want to know the second that we possibly can in order that we can intervene with medical silence and science and more rubber snakes if necessary.
Because medical silence would be the worst thing for
Mm. Well,
that sort of
medical
issue.
silence sometimes is welcome if it's just when you say, "Well, how am I doing, doc?" and he just goes,
That's not what you want
"That's
to hear,
okay.
yeah.
All right. So,
S-
what next?"
So I've never fathomed the way someone can go on stage and, reel off however many notes, however many lyrics, all straight from, the brain. You, of course, have had such a history in that realm. I did read something recently with you where you said, people shouting out requests is just out of the question completely because there's so much that goes into a live show and such. So it must be quite the take to embark on, a run of shows and such.
Well, it is without being blasé. It is another day in the office. I mean, it's what I've been doing since 1968. So I don't think the enormity of it often sinks in. But yes, there is a huge amount of planning, a huge amount of experience that goes into the whole question of doing concerts and tours. And I think if you were to come in from the outside and look at it, it would seem incredibly daunting. But when you break it down into its parts and the routine, then it's not so difficult. This morning, for example, I have to go and do a couple of tour budgets, which are very detailed and are there partly leading up to the presentation of information that my accountants need and auditors need for the purpose of paying tax. So I do my budgets. I try and keep ahead of the game with budgets. As soon as I book the flights and I know pretty much the big costs and what they definitively are, then I'm ready to do a budget, and hopefully nothing is going to change. Maybe exchange rates would change, but they affect the outcome by 1% or so, perhaps. That I can live with. To be, when you actually see the final tour accounts for a series of concerts, and you look at the spreadsheet and analyzing the budget costs versus the actual costs, and you're only 1% or two away, then it's a feeling of accomplishment. I think anybody doing budgets in any kind of a business would give me a bit of a nod of approval for the amount of information I gather and the amount of crystal ball gazing, which I'm pretty good at. So I don't very often get any surprises one way or the other with actual final tour accounts. It's something I doubt if there are any other people that you would talk to, or any other people in the live performing end of the music business who actually do their own budgets. It's something I've done for many years, and something that is part of my remit, as it were, a personal remit. I think I should do this because I can do it better than anybody else. Quite simply put, I can do it better than anybody else because I've got some 50, 60 years of understanding how these things work.
I love the idea that someone might say, Ian Anderson, Jethro Tull, they were a great band, and someone possibly would say, and the accounts were, you couldn't touch the accounts, they were perfect. I like the idea that that's something you could be on one of those lists as well.
Well, I'm sure there are a few current and past employees of the Inland Revenue who would agree with that. Yeah.
So you've just returned from some shows in Italy, I believe. Are you ever able to explore the locale much when you're away? Because as you say, you prepare for eventualities and such. So I'm sure the show is all ready to go. So do you ever get out to explore and, take in whatever
Well,
country you're in?
a typical day, a consecutive concert day, will be getting up at 7 in the morning or whatever, and grabbing a cup of coffee. Then usually it's a substantial drive. It could be 3 hours to the next place, and we try and get there usually around 12:30, where I can enjoy my sit-down meal of the day, which is lunch, and then having checked into a hotel and had a break to review various things on my phone, emails and the specific final details of sound check and show time, and then it's off to do sound check, and 2 hours later it's show time, and then it's back to the hotel and try and get some sleep. So there isn't really any time in the day, unless at lunchtime I have more time, but I don't really. I mean, it's by the time if I have an 8 o'clock show, I really do need to eat at 12:30. I like to, be fully digested prior to going to do sound check. Couldn't possibly perform on a full stomach, which is what the other guys all do. They all eat at 6 p.m. for an 8 o'clock show, which is, for me, absolutely out of the question. I would be regurgitating my food if I try to do that because of the specific nature of my performance. Rather like a Formula One racing driver, I would tend to be on an empty stomach when it comes to doing a show. I mean, you could argue a little bit of pasta or something for energy might be okay, but I prefer to save my moment for my enjoyable salad after a concert because sometimes we get some really good salad making. So I'd like to make my own salad. I don't want someone doing it for me, saying, "Well, I think we'll put a bit of that in, a bit of that." I know what I like to eat and what gives me the enjoyment of healthy eating, especially when it's very late at night, which is a time you shouldn't be really eating pasta or, God forbid, eating meat. I'm careful about that. But in terms of being a tourist, then the only option sometimes I have is to go, as I am, in fact, on Wednesday, going a day early to Poland because we're playing in Krakow. It's a medieval city that I've only visited maybe once or twice before, but never with any time to actually see it. So I'm going there specifically to have on Thursday the opportunity to go and visit a number of places within the city that would interest me to do. So once in a while I do that. But generally speaking, there isn't really time. And there are a lot of cities in the world, a lot of places I played maybe many times over the years that I still have never visited as a tourist. In my end of life years, while I'm still mobile and compos mentis, then I think I would like to try and fit in a few of those to visit, especially when they're not too far away. If it's a couple of hours on an aeroplane, then that's okay. But I wouldn't be wanting to extend my curiosity to Singapore or Tokyo or Sydney, Australia, or anywhere. I mean, I'm done with long haul travel. I really don't want to do it anymore.
I read that you said you were like Michael Portillo with a flute in that, you're able to get around in the UK by train and you don't have to worry about flights and long haul travel and such, albeit you're less colourful than Portillo. But is it important for you to have, such freedom in terms of traveling around the UK when you're doing shows and such,
Well,
rather than having to be squeezed in?
yeah, I've never felt the need or the wish to have a driving license. So I don't do car. I know when you're a young teenage male, particularly, having a car is probably the most consuming thing in your life. Well, these days, probably after having a smartphone. But back when I was young, everybody wanted to have a car. They just couldn't wait to be able to drive and have a car. I was never interested in cars. I was interested in motorcycles, but not in cars. So I've been a train guy as long as I can remember. And my very earliest memories are as a babe in arms, seeing steam trains at North Queensferry in Scotland. Great, huge mechanical beasts belching smoke and steam thundering past the platform, and finding that both terrifying and utterly absorbing. And so my reference to Michael Portillo is that he too has a genuine love for trains, the history, the tradition, and even up to a point to what they represent today in the sense of being, marginally less abusive in terms of impact on the planet, but also because public transport, when it comes to public transport, then my tattered remnants of socialism rise to the fore. And I think, well, if it's good enough for Joe and Mr. Bloggs, then it's good enough for me. And whilst, like others, I get a little bent out of shape when a train is delayed or cancelled, well, it still generally beats being stuck in a traffic jam on the M4, the M6, the M1, the M anything. So I'm generally speaking a train guy, and I use the train in Europe too. I mean, I last week I played in Bologna, and the next morning we took the train to Rome rather than do a 4 hour drive. We hopped on the fast train. And of course, what happened was the train was delayed by 2.5 hours. And the van carrying the back line actually arrived at the hotel at the same time as we did. So that went a bit pear-shaped. But it was a jumper. It was someone who apparently somebody was killed on the line, which, given the police investigations, meant all the trains were delayed significantly in central Italy. But yeah, I do the train a lot. I'm not doing it this week, but I should be doing a few train journeys in December, and again, of course, in April, May when we're touring in the UK.
I was interested in that, with going into the tour. I'm guessing from this chat that planning ahead is definitely in your wheelhouse. So how does planning for the tour next year, the Curiosity Tour, how does that prep compare in 2026 to, late 60s and beyond? Is
Well,
standing on one leg at times during
sure. I mean,
shows becoming a curse?
no, I think when you look at the state of the music, the live concert industry as it was back in the 60s, it was a very different a different matter. You hold equipment upstairs and through narrow doorways in various pubs and clubs around the UK. It was all very makeshift. There was very little planning. I mean, you didn't know what you were facing till you got there, and carrying carrying a Hammond organ, especially the back half, up serious flights of stairs and little clubs and places back in 1967, 68 it was pretty punitive, really. But you didn't know about access. You didn't know there was no one really to consult to find your way around in advance to know what you were facing. And in terms of acoustics of venues and the technology available at the time, it was a couple of Vox AC30s on a chair or two chairs, which formed the PA system, as well as backline amplifiers and whatever else. These days, of course, things are a lot more sophisticated, and the tour production is hopefully taken care of before a promoter signs his contract. That he's read the rider, he knows what it is he's got to do, how much it's going to cost, and so the offer he's making or she is making for a concert is something without nasty surprises. I get very upset if a promoter loses money. Deeply upsets me, but sometimes because they don't do their homework properly. I still feel sadness that somebody loses money, but it does once in a while. It does happen. But a promoter should know. I mean, he can't know how many tickets he's going to sell in advance, but he should have a pretty good idea. And so, generally speaking, the kind of deals that we do shouldn't offer too many nasty surprises to anybody. We do things in a lot more detail with a lot more experience and with a lot more foresight and planning than would have been the case 50 years ago. I think that's good for everybody. Ultimately good for the audience because what they get to see is a more professional and, dare I say, slick performance where hopefully there aren't going to be things visible to them at any rate, or audible to them that are going to be in any way a downside. I mean, there are always going to be a few little hiccups, like there are on the average Airbus 320 or Boeing 737. There's going to be a few little hiccups, something, the power in seat number 23A isn't working, or the air vent is not moving, or there's a condensation on a window or a crack in the pilot's windscreen. I mean, all the things that they have to put in their little book and hopefully will be dealt with by maintenance either later the same day or during the days to come. And it's the same thing with what we do on stage. You know, there will be a few little hiccups, but they shouldn't ultimately be noticeable to the audience and may not even be noticeable to we performers who could be unaware of some of the things that are happening somewhere else in the building or out front in terms of sound and lights. So, but I'd like to think that we go in prepared, and as I said, no one likes nasty surprises, so we try and take out the chance element as much as we can.
So you're off to Poland this week and you've got Christmas shows incoming. You've put out a Christmas record in the past. Are you festive yourself? Is this a month where you're thinking
No, no,
just
no, I'm
about
I'm
shows
no,
or
I'm anything but. I'm not a celebration Christmassy kind of party guy. I mean, I had to face yesterday when some of my family came over the awful reality there would be 13 people sitting down for Christmas lunch. And, I mean, I get on with them all individually. It's just that collectively, I'm not cut out for noisy gatherings of any sort, even if it's with friends and family. I just don't like it. I never have since I was a child. So, party time at Christmas, or indeed any other time of the year, is something that fills me with dread and horror. Certainly not something I'm looking forward to at all. For me, Christmas is a very solemn time, as is Easter. The idea of giving people presents and celebrating Easter like it's another excuse for a few days off and a bean feast and a opportunity to let your hair down. I mean, it's utterly repugnant to me. We're talking about two of the most important days, or the two most important days, certainly in the Christian calendar, which I think, whether you're a Christian or not, you should remember with the solemnity that they require. And whilst I understand how tradition and historical events have shaped the modern Christmas, the way we celebrate it today, I do feel that something is lost that is of huge importance to a large part of the planet who celebrate Christmas and who would call themselves either practicing Christians or of a Christian tradition. I am the latter. I am from a Christian tradition. Hence, I do not celebrate the festive days of the Jewish calendar or indeed the Muslim calendar. They are days that they will quite often slip by without me noticing them. But to other people, they're incredibly important. And certainly, we tend to use Christmas as an excuse. And I wrote a song which I recorded I think at the end of November in 1968, called A Christmas Song. And it was a song, generally speaking, putting down the material excesses of the Christmas festivity period, the way that it was even back then. And of course, today, with the huge emphasis on advertising, I mean, everything from children's toys to the death industry, it seems everything is just in our faces all the time. It's such a material experience, and the spiritual nature of Christmas is to me rather important. Even though I don't call myself a practicing Christian, I am a great supporter of Christianity and the traditions of Christianity and the traditions of our places of worship, where we still have a lot of beautiful buildings that would never be recreated in this day and age, even when they fall into disrepair and can't be maintained. Then it is, I think, very worthy of support. And that's why I do the cathedral and church shows in not only in the UK, but in other parts of the world too, just before Christmas, because it's an easy way of drawing people in for a concert that does, with a degree of success, I hope, blend together the traditions and the spiritual side of Christmas with a more conventional music concert. I like finding that balance, and I think I've got it as good as I can. That balance between the secular and the spiritual side of Christmas. It's important to me, and I like to think that people who come to the concerts will enjoy and feel that sense of balance, that we are not forcing them into submission or being born again when it comes to the Christian religion, but nor do we in any way attempt to bypass it. So there will be a prayer. There will be a moment of recognition of the Christian traditions, and from a musical perspective, I try and keep it, broadly speaking, within terms of what we should be thinking about at Christmas, which is a spirit of generosity, of appreciation of our friends and family, as long as they don't all show up at the same time on Christmas Day expecting to be fed.
One of which I only just discovered recently was Andrew Lincoln, your son-in-law, the actor, which is yeah, quite the connection. So I can't imagine you two spending time sat in front of the TV, munching Quality Street and such. I take it that's out of the
Well, no,
question.
he loves that sort of thing. You know, he's very much a family and friends kind of happy guy who likes to sit down and play party games and do whatever. And I mean, I'm just not that way inclined. I try and take a long pee break if anybody gets out any board game or some silly means of passing time. I try and find a way to excuse myself. But no, he's a party guy. I mean, when I say party guy, not the party guy that he was some years ago before he met my daughter, but she did knock him into shape, I think it's fair to say.
Is it, going back to the church shows and bringing people together, you can't be alone in your thought process, of course. So, do you ever get direct feedback from the people who are coming to these shows, and do they show their appreciation for Jethro Tull, bringing this sort of show to people around the festive period?
Well, inevitably, I will meet some people when when we're loading out and stacking things in a van, which I still do at those shows. Of course, there's a feeling of people having enjoyed it and a feeling that they're appreciative of the effort and the fact that we are raising money for the church. I mean, I don't handle, the church sell the tickets, the church get the income. I provide all the services and we show up to do a concert. But, it does cost me quite a lot of money to do one of those shows, and hence doing them two or three times a year is fine. And so far, the fact that it's a charity effort, I'm able to write off my costs against other income in terms of the inland revenue. So it's accepted as a charitable gift on my part to provide my and everybody's services and pay for it. So I think we have a nice feeling at those shows, and for a lot of people, it will be one of the times they get out before Christmas, and I hope that some of the elements of those concerts extend into Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and Boxing Day, and we set it up. We set up Christmas for them in that sense. So, as indeed churches and cathedrals do, there's usually a Christmas tree and an emphasis on the elements of the origin of the Christian story. That's part of what churches and cathedrals do anyway, but we fit right in. I think I've been doing it since 2004, I think was first time I did one in the UK. I have played in a couple of churches prior to that, but 2004 was the start of doing annual fundraising concerts.
Quick break in the interview just to give you a heads up about some of our previous episodes. From our first episode to our latest, we featured interviews with the likes of Proto Martyr, The Lovely Eggs, Anna Erhard, Chat Pile, The Future Heads, Public Service Broadcasting, Gang of Four, Joshua Idehen, the Jesus Lizard, and even snooker legend Steve Davis. Treat yourself and go back through the episodes. Be sure to tell all your friends and comrades too. Enjoy! I've read elsewhere that you said something about making new music. It's kind of in a almost tongue-in-cheek way, but there's some truth to it out of desperation due to time passing and getting older. So not to, put it into morbid stakes, but how does that feel knowing, you only have so many potential records in you, so many tours and such? That must be quite
Hmm.
an interesting concept.
Well, I referred earlier to the death industry, that somewhat bewildering tendency these days to switch on certain television channels and be accosted with one ad after the other for, special budget funerals and things to do with end of life. And I can understand that demographic tendency to watch certain TV channels and to be fair game when it comes to trying to fleece you to pre-plan your funeral. But in a way, I suppose that's what most of us start to think about at a certain point in life. And I'm not going to be a candidate because I don't want to go up in flames. I'm a hole in the ground guy, as my family are all well aware of. But in a way, making a record is a little bit like, if I don't do it now, if I don't make these plans now, then it may not come to fruition because one of my colonoscopies, BSA tests, blood tests, all the things annually that I do, someday I'm going to come up with some bad news, and hopefully there might be time to squeeze out another new performance or a record project before it's too late. But I do feel time is running out in that sense, and rather than feel dismay or depression about it, I look forward to enjoying what's still available to me, whether it's visiting a city as a tourist that I think I already know but don't really know too well, or whether it's making a new record or planning another year of touring. When I look at the 2026 year planner, then I can tell you what we're doing in November next year. Don't have any actual commitments for 2027 yet, but generally speaking, I am thinking a year ahead, which seems reasonably not too gung-ho to plan a year ahead, since I don't have any underlying health condition or things that would possibly mean that it would be foolhardy to exchange contracts on concerts a year from now. Yeah, at the end of November, I shall be in, for example, I will be in Vienna. And sadly, the day before I'll be in Linz, so I won't get a chance to be a tourist in Vienna. So if it was a travel day, then I might have a couple of hours or a few hours to walk around, but that's not going to be the case. Vienna is one of those cities I've played in many times, but I've never been there on a day off. I don't, I've never been a tourist in Vienna.
It's such a shame that you get to travel to these far-flung places, Well, maybe not that far, but and yet, like you say, it's hotel, lunch, and make your own salad rather than go and visit the tourist spots.
Hmm. And my tourist spots tend to be somewhat predictable because if I see a church, I go in it, assuming the door is open. If I see a good art museum, I will go in it. If I see a national museum of history or a city museum, I will tend to go in it if I have the time. Being still as a keen student of photography after all these years, I will be visiting a couple of cities early next year, specifically to visit some photographic museums which exist in some cities. Not many, but a few in Europe. So there are things that I like to do, but there are things that I don't like to do when I'm a tourist. Maybe they're things that other people would thoroughly enjoy, but they're not for me. So I know the kind of things I like to see, to soak up a bit of the culture of a particular city and see what makes it special. Usually I find what makes it special because I walk around the streets. I see people in their natural habitat, the way they behave, what they do, graffiti-ridden buildings, railway stations, Places where you see people who are muggers and pickpockets, and hopefully they divert their attention elsewhere rather than me because they see me seeing them. There's nothing deters them more than just giving them that slightly withering look. I know what you want, sunshine. So even though I'm a little old man hobbling around in some dodgy parts of town, thus far I've got away with it.
Plan to plan ahead seems to be the way forward in every aspect.
Well, yes, and don't get out your mobile phone, and unless you're. I mean, if I have to do something, if I have to see my phone for some reason, I will choose a moment to stand with my back to a wall where I can see what's in front of me. And generally speaking, I'm not going to be walking down the street looking at my phone where it can be snatched all too easily. So, especially in London, there are certain things you just try to be careful of, and it doesn't mean that you won't be the victim at some point someday with somebody with a sharp knife who's desperate enough to want to engage you in a very physical way. But thus far I'm okay. And
I mean, hopefully that day never comes, but
I carry with me, usually on tour, not quite a mugger's flute or a mugger's watch, but I certainly wouldn't take with me day to day things that were of huge personal value or monetary value because I don't want to lose them. So the flutes I play on stage are not the flutes that I keep and never take out of the house, for example, because they are very valuable and they are very special in one way or another. So
mm,
I would hate someone to steal my flute, the one I use on stage, even though it's not, it's a what you might call it an advanced student model, but it's certainly not. We're not talking James Galway gold flute with a diamond in the end. No.